DC, owned by Warner Brothers, is one of the largest and oldest comic book publishers in the world, and it's undergoing significant changes with James Gunn and Peter Safran taking the helm. They aim to reboot the DC cinematic universe and create a cohesive and successful franchise. So why did the previous iteration fail, and what can the franchise do to avoid disappointment in the future? To answer this question, we need to travel back in time 2 decades. DC dominated the superhero genre with the Dark Knight films, which even earned Heath Ledger an Oscar for his portrayal of the Joker. Meanwhile, Marvel, after surviving financial difficulties in the 90s, was making its mark with the record-breaking success of Spider-Man. However, both DC and Marvel films existed in their own contained universes. It was time for Marvel to change things up. In 2005, Marvel made a daring move by securing a significant investment from Merrill Lynch, offering their valuable characters like Thor and Captain America as collateral. This was extremely risky. If their gambit failed, the bank would now own these heroes. This investment kick-started the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starting with the release of Iron Man in 2008, and the rest is history. Warner Brothers was caught flat-footed, lagging years behind Marvel. After concluding the Dark Knight trilogy in 2012, Warner Brothers attempted to replicate Marvel's success by launching their own interconnected universe with The Man of Steel. To head this up, they selected Zack Snyder as the director for the movies, which I think was problematic. I actually enjoyed most of the films in the Snyderverse, and I like Snyder as a director. I believe he is highly skilled and brings comic book panels to life in unique ways. His movies often have a desaturated visual style though, and a darker, more somber tone. I'm not convinced that this tonal approach is well suited for Superman and many of DC's other heroes. It is pretty much the opposite of Superman's intended aesthetics and character traits in the comic books that Richard Donner so artfully captured in the original Superman movie. The realistic approach taken in Man of Steel by Snyder may have been partly influenced too by Warner Brothers' apprehension that embracing a highly cartoonish style would lead to a similar negative reception faced by the 1997 film Batman and Robin, which received criticism for its excessively campy approach. Combine this with the success of The Dark Knight Rises, which embraced a realistic tone, led them to believe that this approach was effective. Although Superman can be adapted to accommodate darker narratives, his character has consistently symbolised hope and positivity over the course of his 75-year history. As a result, a gritty and realistic universe, which is the calling card of Snyder, that may suit the likes of Batman, did not align well with the essence of Superman that audiences expected to see. The appointment of James Gunn as co-CEO of DC Studios holds the potential to address the tonal issues that many audiences have identified in the Zack Snyder films. Gunn's distinct visual style, characterised by vibrant colours, dynamic cinematography and a well-balanced tone, could provide a more fitting approach to adapting Superman and the DC Universe too. His skill at blending fun, humour with emotional depth and compelling storytelling may effectively align with the optimistic and inspirational nature of Superman and other DC characters. However, it should be noted that adapting a character as legendary and cherished as Superman poses its own unique challenges, accompanied by high audience expectations. Time will tell if Gunn is up to snuff. Hey, just a quick one from me. If you're liking the content so far, could you give me a like and subscribe? This will really help get the video noticed, which is half the battle as a new YouTuber, and it brings me closer to my goal of 1,000 subscribers and being partnered with YouTube. Warner Brothers was undoubtedly inspired by the success of Marvel's MCU and sought to capitalise on the rising popularity. However, there was one crucial oversight on DC's part. Marvel had a clear and unified vision for their franchise, masterfully managed by Kevin Feige and the Russo brothers. In contrast, the DCEU lacked a single leader to guide and harmonise the overarching vision. Instead, it was overseen by multiple Warner Brothers CEOs who prioritised financial gains over a faithful adaptation that would have allowed characters to naturally evolve. By the time Man of Steel released, Marvel had already completed Phase 1, was actively working on Phase 2, and even planning for Phase 3. More importantly, the initial film was focused on introducing the protagonist, with only a few references to other Marvel characters. If we look at Batman vs Superman, it introduced a multitude of new faces, including Wonder Woman, Aquaman, The Flash, Lex Luthor and Alfred. This extensive roster of heroes diverted attention away from the film's core protagonists. Marvel understood the importance of establishing a solid foundation for their universe before expanding further. Each character typically had their own standalone movie with a self-contained plot. Marvel prioritised entertaining their audience, striking a balance between individual character arcs and building a shared universe. In contrast, DC took a reverse approach, driven by a desire to compete with Marvel rather than focusing on captivating and engaging their audience. The reboot of the DCEU should therefore prioritise a gradual expansion of characters and storylines in this cinematic universe. With the MCU having a decade-long head start, it is highly probable that Warner Bros. Will adopt a more sensible approach instead of rushing to catch up with Marvel this time. At least, I hope they do. This cautious approach is favourable as it allows for the development of engaging narratives and the establishment of a strong connection with the audience. The success of the first Avengers film is driven by the fact audiences were already invested in the characters. This is what DC should be looking to recreate. Staying on the topic of characters, when we examine the first Iron Man movie, the stakes are relatively low compared to other superhero films. The conflict revolves around a terrorist acquiring and selling high-tech weapons. There is action as Iron Man fights the villains, but it isn't overwhelming. The most notable moments involve the assembly of the suit, with Tony figuring out its construction. Despite the comedic elements, the movie primarily focuses on Tony's transformation from a selfish jerk to a somewhat self-centered altruist. Iron Man 2 expands on his personal strengths, weaknesses, attitudes, and the worldwide view of the character. A similar situation arises in Thor, where the intimidating destroyer threatens a small town in Nevada, and Loki plans to wipe out a planet inhabited by unpleasant individuals we barely get to know. Although it would be tragic if the town and its people were destroyed, the story centres on the conflict among Thor, Loki and Odin. In Captain America, while the stakes may seem higher, we already know Hydra doesn't triumph. Instead, it focuses on Steve's journey as he embraces his role as Captain America and grows, quite literally, to the challenge. In contrast, Man of Steel emphasises Superman as an iconic figure rather than Clark Kent as an individual. He must save the Earth from a villain who poses a threat without a specific reason beyond being a villain. Similarly, Batman vs Superman presents a poorly defined Superman against a poorly defined Batman, relying on the assumption that Batman is automatically loved and recognised by fans. They team up to combat a generic monster that kills Superman, with numerous poor decisions contributing to the overall flawed concept of the venture. It's crucial, therefore, for the DCEU to adopt Marvel's strategy of starting small and prioritising character development. By initiating with intimate, character-focused storylines, the DCEU can lay a strong foundation for their heroes and individual narratives. Marvel has shown that when audiences have the chance to comprehend the motivations, flaws and personal journeys of characters, a deeper connection is formed. However, one area of concern I do have with the upcoming Superman Legacy film is the potential introduction of numerous characters. There is a risk from what has been announced of falling into the same trap that plagued the old DCEU, where an excessive number of characters complicate the storytelling process. I just hope they don't fall into the same trap again. The original attempt at the DC movie universe has faced significant obstacles from its inception due to interference from top-level executives. A prime example of this interference is Batman vs Superman, where approximately 30 minutes were cut from the film's runtime by apprehensive executives who prioritised a shorter length. This decision led to sacrifices in the film's internal logic and storytelling. Similarly, during the production of The Suicide Squad, director David Ayer effectively lost control of the project during post-production. After the disastrous performance of Batman vs Superman, Warner Bros. Demanded a change in the darker and grittier direction of the DCEU. In an attempt to salvage the situation, Trailer House were brought in and created a fast-paced, music-filled version of The Suicide Squad, which significantly deviated from the original director's vision. However, neither Ayer nor Trailer House's cut performed well during test screenings. In response, Warner Bros. Made the decision to merge the different cuts together, resulting in a Frankenstein-like combination which pleased no one. Additionally, it was mandated in the Justice League that it needed to adopt a lighter, more Marvel-esque tone, which was further complicated by Zack Snyder being replaced by Joss Whedon. Further executive interference was mandated, demanding for a much shorter 2-hour runtime and the ill-advised decision to digitally remove Henry Cavill's Superman mustache, rather than shooting new scenes. These examples shed light on the challenges faced by the DCEU due to creative interference and their negative impact on the final products, including the cohesiveness and overall quality of the films. What is worse is that as projects were released and failed, DC desperately shifted approaches with each movie, meaning there was no tonal consistency to the franchise. The co-presidents of the DC studios, James Gunn and Peter Safran, have the opportunity to make a significant impact in this regard. In fact, Gunn has openly criticised the previous approach as pretty fucked up. Moreover, it appears that Warner Bros. Has learned from past mistakes and has reorganised DC Studios to function almost as a separate entity. This is evident in Gunn's response to a fan on Twitter, where he stated that DC is separate from Warner Bros. As a couple of months ago. While the possibility of corporate interference still exists, I am hopeful that Gunn and Safran can limit it, especially considering the structural changes within DC Studios. To sum up, Warner Bros.' previous attempt to launch a cohesive DC cinematic universe failed spectacularly due to several key reasons. Although I'm sad that the Snyderverse is now dead, I think it needed to happen as it never felt like one universe. Hiring James Gunn and Peter Safran is certainly a step in the right direction. Only time will tell if they can pull it off though. I'm certainly rooting for them. And that's a wrap folks, time for you to go on your merry way.